Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Erin Foley, professional development coach, and today I want to talk to you about a concept that really had a significant impact on my life, my work life, my personal life, all of it, everything. And that is what I refer to as rule books. I learned this concept originally from Brooke Castillo, and she calls it manuals. For some reason, my brain just transferred that into rule books. It's what makes the most sense. So I'm going to talk to you about it as rule books. Here's the concept. Everyone in your life, and specifically what I'm focusing on for this video, is those of you that are struggling with somebody in your workplace. Oftentimes it's a supervisor or manager, sometimes it's a coworker. And one of the things we don't realize is that we have a very specific rule book in our brain for how things should be done, how people should operate, how people should behave. And we view the world through our specific rule book. And we're pretty narcissistic as humans. We kind of tend to assume that most people kind of experience the world similarly to us, and we also tend to assume that people view the world similarly to us. So what we often forget is that we have this rule book, how people should behave, how feedback should be given, how much we should talk in a meeting, what it looks like to be respectful, all of that. And your coworkers, your supervisor, the people in your life have their own rule book. Your rule books are usually not the same. And we make an assumption that they're similar. So when we see people, quote, breaking our rule book, we put all kinds of intentions on them doing so. Because we assume if you and I have the same rule book for what it looks like to be respectful and you behave a certain way, you are being disrespectful and you must know you're being disrespectful, or you must be someone who wants to be disrespectful. So let me kind of put this into context to help your brain understand it a little bit better. So let's take a situation that can be pretty emotional, like you getting what you perceive as critical feedback from your boss. So your boss frequently tells you, hey, these numbers need to be better, or there were too many mistakes in your email, or I want you to do X, Y, and Z for the presentation. And your rule book says, people shouldn't give so much critical feedback. It's disheartening and demotivating for employees. For every piece of critical feedback, you should be providing positive feedback and recognizing how hard I work, okay? So that's your rule book, and it makes total logical sense to you. So when your boss approaches you and says, hey, here's the 3 things that I need you to work on, your brain is going to interpret it through your rule book, and you're going to be like, there's a problem. My boss is disrespectful. She doesn't appreciate my work. She doesn't know how to give feedback. Your boss has a different rule book. And let's assume in this circumstance that your boss believes the best way to mentor and serve the employees that work under them is to give honest and direct feedback as frequently as possible. And maybe your boss believes that sandwiching that in positive feedback, here's something to work on, positive feedback, is condescending. They might think they might not like it when people do that, and they might think people know that that's just a bullshit way to give somebody some direct and honest feedback. I know people can handle it, and the best way to really help someone develop professionally and to be a great asset to this company is to give them direct, clear feedback. 2 different rule books, right? So what happens when you have that encounter is that you are now prescribing all kinds of stuff based on your own rule book, and you're assuming that your boss is disrespectful, doesn't appreciate you, all kinds of things that the mind will make it mean, even though your boss has a very logical explanation for why she's behaving the way that she is. You can look at it in something as simple as a meeting where 2 people are sitting in a meeting and maybe your coworker thinks we need to debate ideas sufficiently to get to the best outcome. And you believe being succinct and not spending too much time is the best use of time. and that when you're not being succinct, you're disrespecting people's time, right? You're both here. Maybe your coworker keeps wanting to discuss things. You keep thinking like, yo, we need to be succinct. You're coming to the table with two different set of rules for how this should function. And the problem isn't necessarily that you have two different sets of rules. The problem is that what we tend to do is oversimplify the other person's reason for their behavior because it doesn't make sense based on our rule book. So if I'm the person who wants succinct meetings, which would be me, I like shit to be like quick, right, and to the point. Then I'm going to look over here at Sally, who's like talking, and keeps bringing up ideas, and I'm going to be like, Sally just wants to hear herself talk. Sally doesn't care about our time. Sally doesn't respect anyone but herself, okay? Here's the truth. If I were to climb inside of Sally's brain, here's what it's not going to say. I don't respect anyone's time. I just want to hear myself talk. Inside of Sally's brain is going to be a very logical explanation for why she's operating the way that she is. And she's going to express to me things that I'm not likely thinking of. Ideas need to be hashed out. You know, several things have slipped through because we've done meetings too quickly, yada, yada, yada. So here's what I want you to consider. There's a couple of things. People's rule books will be different than you. And most of the time, you don't actually need their rule book to change for everyone to operate. So maybe in the meetings, we're going to have to have a conversation about how long we want meetings to go, what's your reasoning behind them being long, what's my reasoning behind them being short, and then we're going to come to an agreed length of time. Fine. And understanding that people have rational rule books will help you come to that conclusion. But many circumstances, like your boss giving you critical feedback, you don't actually need to have a conversation about your rule books. You don't actually need anything to change. You just need to respect that someone is operating from a rule book that's differently than yours, that makes logical sense to them, and allow yourself to apply a generous interpretation to their behavior based on what makes logical sense to them. It is a skill to be able to really think about why someone might logically be behaving in a way that they are, particularly when that behavior operates differently than what you want or what you feel like you need. And one of the most empowering skills you can have in your career is the ability to, number one, let people have their rule books. Most of the time, we don't change our rule books. You're not going to change your basic rule book the majority of your life, and most of the time people around you aren't. So sort of moving through the world where we're constantly expecting everybody to change their rule books all the time to accommodate ours means you're constantly frustrated and you're constantly kind of pushing against what is. So allowing people to have their rule books and allowing them to operate based on their own rule books will free you. The next level of that is when you have an ability to kind of get inside of their rule books by really taking a moment when you're dealing with a situation that's frustrating you or overwhelming you and you're having a lot of an emotional reaction to it, really taking the time to become skillfully empathetic, which means you're thinking about what is the rule book with which they're operating that makes, this is the key, that makes really logical sense to them. And this takes some time and some skill, because here's what tends to happen. I'll do certain cognitive exercises with my clients where I'm having them sort of climb into the shoes of someone that they're working with or someone that they're struggling with. And I'll be like, why did your boss ignore that email? And they'll be like, because he's an idiot, right? Because he doesn't care about his workers. Now, that is the unevolved part of our brain, making a quick interpretation based on our own rule book. And the problem with that interpretation is makes you mad, makes you dismissive, and actually disempowers you most of the time. You do not become skilled at really understanding people in ways that help you be more persuasive, more empowered around them, and in ways that help you deal with their behavior in the ways that they're operating with much more ease. So he's just stupid. Nope, not what his brain is thinking. He just doesn't care about his employees. Likely not what he's thinking if I were to ask him why he didn't respond to that email. So when I say become skillfully empathetic, I mean you take the time to climb into their shoes and think about how their brain is operating. What are the things that that person is anxious about? What are they juggling? What are they navigating in these decisions? Why might the decision to not email you back make total logical sense to them or be a completely innocent oversight in their world? And when you step into it and really try to skillfully become empathetic enough to understand all of these different people are operating based on different logic and different rule books that make sense in their own brains, you can get out of some really emotionally charged situations where you're burning up your mental energy, really resisting something, and you can all of a sudden be like, my boss is navigating several different things. My boss has a supervisor who's coming down hard on them. At night, she's anxious about how well we're performing because the numbers are problematic. So her feedback to me is based on her need for us to perform better and her to make sure she's clearly communicating all the things that need to change, right? Different than my boss just doesn't appreciate coworkers or workers and she's a stupid idiot. Like, that is something that as humans, we have to take the time to evolve in ourselves, because your natural gut instinct is going to be to simplify their behavior, to look at it through your own rule book, and to dismiss them as having negative intentions, problematic intentions very quickly. And a lot of times it makes people show up less effectively at work. Like, I see this influence people's performance all the time. I see it influencing your ability to be persuasive, to really understand other human beings and how they operate and what they might be doing enough that you can move through your workday in an empowered fashion, or enough that you can make an argument if you're trying to make an argument for something different, to shift something, to have an operation that's different. You understand much more clearly what the person in front of you might be needing or how they might be viewing this. So it is a superpower, and it's something that I highly encourage you to start applying in your own life. One of the most fun places to apply it is with your partners. Like, if you have a romantic partner, if you have a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend, it's really hard to do this in that setting because we definitely project and assume like they need to operate the same way we do, but they have their own rule book, right? My rule book might be being respectful means not leaving your coat on the floor next to the door. And my partner's rule book might say, being respectful is like allowing me to just relax and let my stuff go where it goes when I first walk in the door. Different rule books. He's likely not going to change his rule book. I'm likely not going to change my rule book. So we're just going to coordinate our behavior the best that we can and come from the assumption that he has perfect logic for his behavior and I have perfect logic for my behavior. And I don't need to demonize or overly personalize the behavior, because when I do that, I'm just operating from my rule book and I'm really not using my skilled empathy. So that is the coaching lesson for today. Telling y'all that understanding the rule book concept and really working it in my life changed so many things, freed me in so many ways, and it really empowered me to become more successful. So I hope that it was useful for you. If you want to check out more about me, please feel free to go to Erin M, as in mindset, erinmfoley.com. If you're somebody who's struggling with this because you might be in a job that's new, you might be in a role that's new, you've recently up-leveled, something has shifted or changed, I have a great free resource on there about how to stop feeling so insecure in your new job or role, so feel free to go check that out. All right, I'll be back with more information for you. Thanks for tuning in.